And it's time for the Bob Lonsberry Show with the guests, the Crime Dogs. They managed to get by security here on News Radio WHAM1180.
That's a voice of an angel right there, boys. That's Barry V. Hello, welcome to the Bob Lonsberry Show. We are the hosts of the Crime Dawg Podcast. My name is Johnny FIORICA, retired detective with the Rochester Police Department for 30 years. Sitting alongside me, my trusted co-hosts on the podcast, David Simpson and Jason Blanchard. Guys, I got to be honest with you. Barry said it. We co-hosted, filled in for Bob back in April. I have no idea what they were thinking by asking us back.
I'm shocked.
It's holiday week, so there must be slim pickings. So we got asked again.
So you're pretty much thinking that they just did that. So we weren't even like the B side of the album. We were like the D side.
If we said no, they were just going to play music for 4 hours.
Yeah, I don't know. Phil Mercado, when he called me, he's a program director. He's like, "Hey, you guys want to come back July 9th?" I'm like, "Yeah, Phil, sure." After today, Phil's probably going to be looking for a new job.
Your number will be deleted out of his phone.
Guys, so listen, we're on the Lonsberry Show. We had Bob on our podcast.
He was gracious enough to come on. I thought it was pretty insightful.
Yeah, he was really he was great. But the funny thing is, you guys remember we talked to him? He literally at one point on the podcast started to interview us, and we didn't realize it for like 15 minutes.
It was like a fireside chat. It was. I didn't even know we were doing a podcast. He started turning the tables on us.
He turned the tables on us quick too.
Yeah.
I had no idea what the hell was going on, and all of a sudden I go, "Wait a minute, Bob's interviewing us."
He was a lot. He was different than on the show. I think he
was great. He was
loosened
phenomenal.
his belt and settled in, and he was good to go.
Yeah, once he sat down and he was in the studio with us, and he started getting into like hitting the sweet spot of the bat. That's when he actually put on his interview hat and came after us, but like,
yeah.
You know,
he really liked the studio too. That's a compliment to our silent sponsor. That was he's very impressed with our setup.
Yeah, we have a nice.
He was also very impressed with Danny's setup with the cameras and the various camera angles.
Danny, our producer,
makes us look good.
Super producer
makes us look good.
Super producer Danny Agnew, who, by the way, is in the studio right now recording us for our podcast. And he said, "Hey, don't forget to tell the people to like and subscribe at thecrimedawgpodcast.com. So this way, if they'd like and subscribe, then we can upload these videos for them."
How long are you going to hold that for, Dan? Like, Jesus.
Danny's going to have, he's holding the camera right now. For people that obviously you can't see because we're on the radio, but he's literally holding a camera up filming. His shoulders are going to be like Schwarzenegger's.
He's got tremors right now. He's shaking.
He's going to have traps like Schwarzenegger when this thing's done. Oh man! Anyways, guys, well, listen. You heard it on the Barry V talking about it, and Todd Halliday. As retired cops from the RPD, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about. We're going to be somber for a minute. We want to give a shout out to the Ritter family. They have local ties here in Rochester, New York. Jamieson was murdered on July 4th in Cleveland, Ohio. He was a Cleveland, Ohio police officer. Officers went to the area neighborhood to serve a warrant, felony warrant, and according to their chief, when they saw the suspect's last name was Hardy, left the home on a bicycle, opened fire, and obviously killed Officer Ritter. Like I said, we'd be remiss if we didn't give a shout out, and God bless him and his family. So, folks, stick with us on the other side of the break. We'll be right back. We're Johnny FIORICA, David Simpson, Jason Blanchard from the Crime Dawg Podcast. Welcome back, folks. We're sitting high atop the 5-star building in Rochester, New York. Again, it's Johnny FIORICA from the Crime Dawg Podcast, sitting along my co-host from the pod, Jason Blanchard and Dave Simpson. Folks, we were up against the break last time, but we want to, like I said, we were going to be somber for a couple minutes. We want to talk about Officer Ritter. Jamieson Ritter was the Cleveland, Ohio police officer that was killed in the line of duty on July 4th last weekend. We want to talk about him because anytime we have a line of duty death, regardless if it's locally, state, or federal, we always feel as cops, little piece of our hearts get ripped away, and we want to pay an homage to to Jamieson's family because they have local ties in Rochester. We have the CrimeDawgPodcast.com on our website. We actually have a link for a fundraiser for Jamieson. So if you guys want to go to the CrimeDawgPodcast.com, you can support Jamieson's family by buying some apparel on the website.
Yeah, Johnny, it's another heartbreaking stat, right? That a young man in law enforcement, young officer, local ties, and senseless. By all accounts, this guy was a stand up. Served in ROTC at Syracuse University, went to McQuaid, David's alum, and
Go Knights.
And it's just to say it's tragic is it does no justice. I mean, this family is torn apart. It's heartbreaking, and our thoughts and prayers definitely are with their families.
Yeah, the thing is the last time we were in here, we were having the same somber moment for the Syracuse cops that were killed. It's just tragic that this kid lost his life. He sounded like a great young man, and the war on cops continues. It's undeniable that it's taken place, and my heart's with their families. That's about all I can say about it.
Yeah, the sad reality is Jamieson's dad was one of the officers that was shot tragically. Also, I believe he was shot in the West Webster incident, right, Jay?
Correct, and also retired from Greece Police Department, I believe.
Yeah, so that's not a good day when we have one of our brother officers get murdered in the line of duty. We said it was going to be a somber topic, but we would be remiss if we did not pay homage to him and his family.
He's actually, I believe, being brought back to the area today. They showed on the news last night. I watched, and they had a funeral in Cleveland yesterday, and saw snippets of that on the news. And then he's being escorted by the state police back to Webster for local funeral and local calling hours here. So
everything's going to be back here in Rochester?
In addition to what was in Syracuse. I'm sorry, in addition to what was in Cleveland. So it's that poor family now has to continue to go through that, and it's just it's tough. Our hearts are with them.
All right, folks. God bless the Ritter family. We'll be back. We're going to come on the other side of the break. We're the Crime Dawg Podcast, hosted Bob Lonsberry Show. Come back and see us, folks. Welcome back to the Bob Lonsberry Show, folks. We're the guys from the Crime Dawg Podcast, filling in for Bob today. Guys, by the way, did you listen at all, Jay, to the financial guys on the radio yesterday?
I listened. I listened for probably about an hour yesterday.
You did?
Did you get any advice from them?
I did. Unfortunately, what I figured out is I'm going to have to probably work another 47 years until I can retire. That's what it sounded like.
That's what you got from it?
That's what it sounded like to me, yes.
That sounds like a bad day.
Yes. Didn't sound like sound financial advice.
Well, listen, first of all, for those, I'm sure you know, but the financial guys guest hosted yesterday, and they were phenomenal. They were phenomenal to the point where
in what sense?
They actually sounded like they knew what they were doing.
They were like really super organized.
Really?
Yeah. Like if you listen to
more so than us coming in listening to the news to get our ideas for the show when we came in.
That's correct.
Yeah, we were listening to Barry V and Todd Halliday doing some show prep 14 seconds before the show started.
I felt like me coming in to take a test before school when he came in and started studying like 15 minutes before the test. That was pretty much what we did.
No, but they were great, man. When we co-hosted in April, I was like, okay, yeah, cool, let's do it. We just popped in the studio, we did it, and then I tried to be a little more professional this time, and then I started like, oh, let me see who they got this week, and then I started listening to financial guys, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh man, I better start writing some stuff down.
That's like a tough follow.
It's like following Sinatra off the stage.
I know, right? Like,
it's like but they had like it was almost like a Broadway play. They had a beginning, like if you look at it on iHeart on the app, they had like a beginning, a middle, and an end. They had like some woman, Jessie Jane Duff from like Newsmax, which is like the Fox News Junior Varsity.
I'm familiar.
So basically,
have you ever heard of CNN?
So basically, it wasn't just three idiots sitting around a microphone talking, is what you're saying yesterday.
That's pretty much in summation, Jason. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that listening to them, it was quite intimidating.
the bar's been lowered. The audience is disappointed on a Tuesday morning, and all we can do is offer our apologies and try to move forward as best we can.
Well, look at it from this point of view. If they gave financial advice and a lot of people maybe feel bad about what took place, like Jay yesterday, then maybe we come in and added a little humor to it, and it
they talked a lot of politics yesterday.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, like a super bunch.
I got to check these guys out.
They were good.
They're probably over your head, David. I'll be honest.
Probably,
with you, but you should still listen.
I didn't go to that Fairport school, so you're right.
By the way, for those that don't know the Crime Dawg podcast, this is my co-host David and Jay, who are constantly in a bicker fest. It started this morning. We kind of carpooled over here because it's just easier to come to the studio in one car. So they all jump in my truck, and the shots got fired as soon as Jay got. Jay, you were upset a little bit with David today?
Well, yes, I guess is the short answer to that. And I guess, as I tried to impart a little bit of knowledge to David, which he disagreed with, as David was the first person to jump into the car, he jumped in the front passenger seat. Mm-hmm. And I said, David, when adults are going somewhere together, usually the first person in the car hops in the back.
Leaders jump in the front seat, Jay.
Right.
I don't sit in the back seat.
Right. So I'll let you know when we've identified a leader, then they can hop into that front passenger seat. So nonetheless, some people were like, Dan was loading up his equipment, and I had grabbed
our producer.
That's correct. And I had grabbed some coffee and some stuff for the studio. So David was, just right in the catbird seat, ready to roll. And, I'm glad that he was comfortable. So, yes, I felt I needed to take an opportunity this morning when I got in to express my concerns as to how he jumped in.
It sounded more like a reprimand, exactly.
Well, it was a combination of both. I tried my best to not get gassed up at 07:15 this morning.
You're pretty gassed up.
Does David get credit for being the first one at the carpool lot?
On time?
Well, maybe, but other people had responsibilities to contribute to the show. So Danny our producer was grabbing gear, and I was also grabbing some stuff. So if he was the last one there, he definitely would have gotten yelled at for that. But he was on time, so I will acknowledge that. David, nice hustle.
Thank you, Jay.
Well, listen, I'm glad I'm sitting in between you two because I want to make sure that there's no fisticuffs we're probably not going to be asked back. But, at the end of the day, I just want Bob's studio to get roughed up, if you will.
I did throw a Nerf dart at him.
It was aggressive.
So, listen, guys, we got a pretty cool guest calling in the third hour. We got, and I'm not going to tease it because usually you guys make fun of me when I tease stuff because I usually just give it up anyway. So I'm just going to say who it is. But we got Chief Scotty Peters from the Irondequoit Police Department calling in the third hour. Going to talk a little bit police stuff with Scotty.
He'll be a great guest. He's a great chief. He was a great city cop. I worked with him on the SWAT team and worked under him and when he was deputy chief, as did Jay and yourself. So it'll be a fun combo.
Yeah, definitely. Huge fan of Chief Peters. Loved when he was here with us, and worked with him back in Genesee section, right? So going back over 20 plus years, and always been a gentleman and never afraid to offer his opinion.
Folks, we're up against another break. Stick with us on the other side. We're the Crime Dawg Podcast, filling in for Bob Lonsberry today.
You talk about how cold it is in here?
Welcome back. Bob Lonsberry Show. We're your fill-in host for today. Johnny FIORICA from the Crime Dawg Podcast, along with my co-host David Simpson and Jason BLANCHARD. Boys, welcome back.
Good to be here, Johnny. David's crying about the temperature in the studio.
Oh, my God. It's so cold in here. It's like an ice box.
Take an iron pill and quit your crying.
Well, that's what happens when you're in shape, David.
Sorry. I don't have that extra roll to insulate me.
This guy's unbelievable.
Well, listen. So listening to Barry V, all joking aside, and Todd Halliday, and you listen to what happened in Chicago. I saw it this morning when I was up early. But was it over 100 people shot in Chicago
on the weekend?
Over the holiday weekend, yeah.
On the weekend.
Over the holiday weekend.
So, 117 or 19 people
19 dead.
Those numbers are nuts.
It's unbelievable, and it's really unbelievable from a city that has such restrictive gun laws, right? No different than New York City. And, to have that amount of violence and death. I just when has that become the norm? How is that acceptable in any city? That's we just briefly talk about it on a newsreel, on a news cycle, and we go on to the next thing. It's unbelievable.
Well, I think it's acceptable because it's a Democratic-run city, and the Dems control the narrative. The Dems control the media narrative. They control what gets disseminated, and I think that's the reason why it doesn't come full circle every single time it happens, which is almost every weekend. I think that's a big issue.
Exactly. I don't think a Democratic-run city is what are they going to say? They want it to go away because their failed policies are a direct result in this type of violence. They love criminals.
It's just unbelievable. To have that many people shot, that many people injured, murdered in one weekend, and then all of a sudden, it doesn't even hit the ticker on any of the major news outlets.
Well, it's buried. It's
intentionally
away,
buried. It's intentionally buried.
100%.
It's intentional. We know. Obviously, we've all been. We got almost. What do we got? We got close to 75 years of police experience in this room, right? We know. We've all seen shootings and murders and things like that. This is. Just to put it in perspective, David, you worked in a homicide unit. So a couple years ago, we had the most murders in Rochester's history, which was like 83 or 85.
That's crazy.
Okay, but that was in a 365-day period as of 1 year.
Right.
They had 17 or 19 people murdered in a weekend.
Right. And just to put that number in perspective, that's 3 times the amount of murders that were occurring when I was in homicide. We would get about 30 to 40, most years 30, and they were creeping towards 90.
That's crazy. I can't believe that you would have.
You can't investigate that. That's like the chocolate, when Lucy's on the conveyor line. I love Lucy, going way back, and she can't keep up with the chocolate coming down.
She starts eating it.
That's like a body dropping so fast that you can't even give it a sound investigation. Like, you can't get caught up. They just keep coming.
Logistically, I don't know how. Logistically, I would love to see their war room and how they organize everything. I see what Captain Frank Umbrino and his guys and girls do up in our unit. You work that unit. I see the board when I go up. When I used to go up to our murder unit, and just to literally logistically keep track of all of those incidents are crazy.
There's so much to a homicide investigation. That's the thing, is that it's all hands on deck, and then you have so many murders coming in that it's just impossible to keep up with and keep it all straight.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's crazy. Folks, stick with us on the other side. We're the Crime Dawg Podcast. We're hosting for Bob Lonsberry today. We're going to talk about a lot more things and take some calls. Stick with us, folks.
How long do we have to come back?
Welcome back, folks. Bob Lonsberry Show. Welcome back. Welcome back. We are the Crime Dawg Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny FIORICA, my co-host, David Simpson and Jason Blanchard. Prior to going up against that break, we were talking about all the murders that happened in Chicago over the weekend. They had over 100 people shot, 17 or 19 murdered. David Simpson, one of my co-hosts here, he was a retired detective with RPD, worked in our murder unit, worked in our homicide unit for the illustrious Captain Frank Umbrino. David, we were just like you were talking, we were talking on a break, right? Because we continued to talk. But the scope and the manner of investigations when you talk about murders versus assault shootings.
Yeah, not to diminish an assault shooting, but when a homicide occurs, it's such a all hands on deck for that unit. And you're pulling every piece of video has to be combed through. You have to get it. Someone has to watch it, take notes on it. And a lot of times the person watching the video needs to watch all the videos because some videos show a little bit of things. You need to be kind of put them all together. But just interviewing all the people, it's just so many interviews, multiple times you're interviewing them. It's just, these things take so long. They talk about the first 48 and stuff like that. It's a homicide investigation usually it's not that quick. You know, you want to grab the guy that quick, but these things take, you know, weeks, months to put together. Because you get one shot at it, and you want to have that really good case. So when when the bodies drop like this, and you get so much, it's overwhelming for these folks, and they do such a great job, especially here in Rochester. But those numbers are astonishing. I would love to know how many homicide detectives they have working in Chicago, like total.
Right.
Well, and think about too, not just here in Rochester, but in Chicago, in any city here in the country, these homicides are it could be, you know, whatever decisions are made immediately out there by the officers rendering aid, right? I mean, these officers are carrying tourniquets. They're rendering aid that we hadn't done, you know, 5, 10, 15 years ago on the streets, right? They're trained to do that. They're the care that they're getting at these hospitals. So, you know, 19 homicides could have been 25 homicides in Chicago very easily, right? So these officers that are out there on the street, and the care that people who are shot are getting it's way better than it was before, and they're triaging individuals, you know, at scenes and applying life-saving measures, you know, out there on the streets, and turning those what could have been potential homicides into assault shootings.
That's a great point. And I mean, I remember when I first came on, and you remember when we used to be like, our triage of a shooting victim was, you better step it up. Talking about the ambulance, that was the extent of it, because we really didn't have any type of, you know, medical or first responder type training when it came to triaging like people that are hurt that bad. And now these guys, you know, they come out and they know all of that stuff and saving lives.
Yeah, folks, stick with us. We're going to talk more about a little crime action after we get back on the Bob Lonsberry Show. Stick with us for the Crime Dawg Podcast. Good morning, Bob Lonsberry fans. We are sitting in today, the co-hosts of the Crime Dawg Podcast. I'm Johnny FIORICA. Sitting alongside me, Jason Blanchard and David Simpson. I know we're talking a lot of violence today. That is our background. We are retired cops with the Rochester Police Department. I did 30 years as a detective. David, you did 22.
Yes.
Jay, you're in your 2.5 decade mark, right?
Right. Have actually the end of this month is my anniversary, so I have 24 at the end of this month.
Well, according to the financial guys, you'll be doing this for another 47 years. So
well, they didn't say that, but that was my take after listening to them. I felt like I only have another 47 years to go. Yeah,
I figured we better give some of the listeners that don't know us a little bit of background. Like, why are these guys talking about murder and shootings and stuff? Like, well, we have a plethora of experience, folks. And if you have any questions or calls related to anything law enforcement related, don't be afraid to give us a shout out to studio here at 585-222-1180, 222-1180. So we were talking before the break. You both made some good points, and I want to address one at a time. David, you talked about the way when shootings and murders happen and the investigative aspect of that. You know, we had Captain Umbrino on from our homicide unit in Rochester, New York. It was a great interview. People can go to the crimedawgpodcast.com and click on our library of videos. But Frank's on there talking about it. One of the things that Frank said, and, you know, being old timers like we all are, when you talk about shootings and murder specifically, you know, back in the day it was, okay, you two are on call, you know, whether it was two detectives, Smith and Johnson, whoever they were, you're on call, boom, they call the two detectives in, they'd work the case as far as they could work it. Usually it was like sometimes 24, 36 hours, knocking on doors, doing whatever. But Captain Umbrino talked about the way they do it now, they literally have to have two primaries, right? They have two detectives, two leads, and then they have a plethora of support staff. Those are the other detectives that work in a unit, because there's so much to do now relative to technology. You know, Frank did a great job when he was on our podcast breaking all that down, saying I needed a set of these guys to look at cameras. I need a set of these guys to look at phones. There's so much stuff to do.
Yeah, that started, as far as my memory serves, I went to homicide in 2012, and that started to get implemented where you'd have two primaries and other detectives would be called in to help with that support stuff. It is great. With the volume that they're getting, though, you get guys working on, let's say, my case, and you're helping me with it, looking at video and stuff. But then another one comes in, and then you're taking that, and then you have that plus the video from mine. It's just so overwhelming to keep all the information straight, to stay up to speed on it. Because once you leave if you're reviewing video, let's say, and you leave that and you go to like another part of an investigative process on your own case, you kind of lose the feel for what you were doing a little bit. You step away. You got to reacclimate yourself to that, and come back to it. That's very difficult to do. So when you get this volume, it breaks up the continuity of it for sure.
Like Frank had explained, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, they literally have, because if you think about it, right? I mean, we came on with cameras. There was no cameras. This was, especially when we came on, 2-3 decades ago. I mean, there's a camera literally everywhere you go. Not only body-worn cameras that the officers carry now on their chests, but you have phone videos. People taking video. They have Ring doorbell cameras.
Bus videos
There's
awesome.
Bus video.
So good, too.
Yeah.
Especially
RTS.
Yeah, they're rolling around, and you get shootings on the street and stuff like that. And these videos catch the before and afters. The bus videos are tremendous.
Yeah.
Help solve a lot of murders.
Let's solve that. Unfortunately, Mary Jackson, which was like 20 years ago, they named a bus terminal after her on Main Street. She was a beautiful woman who was unfortunately murdered by one of the customers, and it literally, the assault took place right on the cameras. I mean, they were a good 20 years ago.
I never knew that.
Yeah, Mary Jackson. Anyway, so at the end of the day, we have, like I said, you got cameras all over the place. So Frank was explaining that he's just got to call a team. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I'm not even trying to joke around. That's exactly why I never wanted to work homicide, because there's so much work. I mean, it's nonstop, right? Nonstop.
It is nonstop. But the cool thing when I went to homicide that I remember is there's nothing you can't get from an investigative standpoint.
Right.
Like if your mind can think it, they'll make it happen, because what's more important than a murder? So that's the cool part of it.
I know we're the three of us. I know I can say this aren't much for watching cop TV shows and everything else. I'll say my wife's favorite show on TV is probably The First 48, and I think that does a great job of showing how these guys work an investigation. We were fortunate here to have it in Rochester. One of our buddies, Kirk Pirro, was on it when it was here. But we were also fortunate enough on our podcast to have Detective Jason White from Tulsa PD come. And Tulsa is one of the original OGs of The First 48. And I think that he said that he's been on like over 100, refresh my memory, over 100 episodes for The First 48. So that was a great opportunity to have him come and sit down and talk about how police work gets done in the Midwest, right, which is pretty similar to how it gets done in the Northeast, but the tools that they use and seeing them take an investigation. And he's, Tulsa's a very busy city from a homicide standpoint. And he's, he talked about it, and being able to see how they covered on The First 48 is pretty cool. So,
yeah, that was a pretty good interview. We'll talk a little bit more about Jason White and The First 48 and murders and shooting on the other side of the break. Folks, stick with us with the Crime Dawg Podcast, filling in for Bob Lonsberry.
Another hour of the Bob Lonsberry Show with the hosts of the Crime Dawg Podcast starts now on News Radio WHAM1180.
Thanks, Todd. Thank you, brother. We are the Crime Dawg Podcast. Host Johnny Fiorica with my co-host David Simpson and Jason Blanchard. Guys, folks, we're going a little heavy on the crime and the shootings and unfortunately murders today. Not only we're the Crime Dawg Podcast and we're all cops, but we also talked about the massive shooting that went on over the weekend in Chicago. 100 plus people that were shot, 17 and 19 murdered out of those 100. And then, of course, our brother, July 4th, Jamieson Ritter, officer in Cleveland, Ohio, with ties to Rochester, New York, was murdered. So we're going a little heavy on the crime on this episode of the Bob Lonsberry podcast because of our background and also what's going on in America the last week. Guys, we were talking about a lot of things regarding murders and shootings and what we do. David, you made a good point on the break. I think what a lot of people don't understand from police officers and detective standpoint, when a massive shooting happens or murders happen, the all hands on deck, the shot clock starts. We never know when it's going to end, right?
Right. When you see that command van on the news show up, that's there because everyone's called in and there's basically a meeting inside that van where everyone's given their assignments of what they're going to do. The leads usually kind of sit back a little bit and take an overview approach, and then other people are tasked with like very specific assignments of what they need to do. But you're not going home. Most of the time, those guys are working 24, 48, 72 hours straight.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of times you'll go up to homicide and see guys sleeping, you know, underneath their desk or at their desk, just trying to catch a couple hours, and then you're right back at it. So that's a little bit about how it kind of unfolds. But that command van is where it all basically starts, and everyone meets there, and then they kind of go off and do their assignments and report back to the public safety building.
Yeah, when you say command van, for those for the visual, when you see it on our news or one of the newscasts, you're talking about that big old RV looking bus with the police logos all over it.
Yeah, it's usually how you know that a homicide's occurred when you see that.
Yeah, it's like a mobile. We say command van. It's like a mobile office. It's like a mobile, kind of like a hub for all the detectives and the bosses and all the chiefs to get in there to kind of powwow to figure out how they're going to attack the investigation.
Yeah, there's a meeting room on it, dry erase board, place for everyone to kind of get the overview and get their assignments, that's a hub of activity. And then usually you guys branch off, like I said, to do their assignments, and then they end up back at the PSB. But I guess the key point is these people work so hard and they don't stop. Like this goes on and on. People aren't going home. They're missing their kids' stuff. They're staying with it. And because those first 72 hours are really important.
You know, and it's truly a collaborative effort, right? So it starts with the men and women who respond to patrol with identifying the scene and containment and securing, you know, potential witnesses or people with information and coordinating that with major crimes and you know, down the line with the district attorney's office. And, you know, it's one big puzzle piece that gets put together very impressively by you know, the men and women that are out there, and it's you know, officers that are working, you know, primarily when the stuff usually happens. It's third platoon and midnights, and you know, they get pretty proficient with their tasks. You know, I say it all the time, and it's not a knock on any other agency, but an officer working, you know, third platoon or first platoon in the city of Rochester in the gut for, you know, 3 years has probably seen and done most things in that period of time that they're not going to get thrown a curveball at them and feel uncomfortable with. So that's a testament to you know, the professionalism that they go out there every day and do.
Absolutely, and just the initial responding officers are a key component to the investigation. The guys pulling out their cameras, taking pictures, like you said, grabbing witnesses, holding the scene, knowing to extend the scene, preserving evidence. That's the backbone of the police department, and the backbone of most criminal investigations.
Yeah, those brother and sister officers that first respond, setting up that tape and making sure everybody stays out of those scenes, because we always used to say, right, the bigger the better. You know, we always say we could always move it in, but it's tougher to move it out, especially when those July shootings happen and it's 90 out and you're sitting on a city street corner and you're trying to push people back. It's tougher to expand it than it is to bring it in.
And another point of that is a lot of people wonder why roads are closed so long after. And from a detective's point of view, the scene, once you give it up, can never be brought back. So a lot of times guys want to see the scene, and girls want to see the scene from a detective standpoint in daylight. So they hold the scene until first light so we can kind of walk the scene and get a good visual. Obviously, it's better than seeing it in the dark.
And we've talked about technology, right? Those body-worn cameras, they show the you know, and when we play that back over, you know, maybe in court or down the line through the investigation, they show the chaos and the situations that the officers are rolling up in, and basically show the investigation from the inception of it, you know, from the second that 911 call is made, you know, the response and really gives a huge picture of how that, you know, investigation unfolds.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you talk about the amount of effort that goes in. I mean, people, you know, especially when there's an incident that involves the cops, it becomes even worse, right? So when we have officer-involved shootings, whether they are the person that shot or the person that got shot. I mean, things are intensified tenfold. I mean, we've all taken part in those investigations also. And the thing is the reason why it goes tenfold is because now you're almost under a shot clock. Because that shot clock, because everybody wants to see those body worns, like Jay was saying. Everybody wants to see, they want to know now. And I think what people in the community need to understand is that it's important to try not to rush investigations, especially from the district attorney's standpoint. You start rushing investigations and trying to get all the information out now, then it could be a detriment down the road, whether it's a police-involved incident or not. But when you have investigations that get rushed and they want to know, well, tell me what happened. You know, they're sticking the microphone in Chief Smith's face or Sheriff Baxter's face or Sandra Dorley's face or whomever's face. Then all of a sudden what ends up happening is you're trying to get all this information. And when you try to put too much information out there, sometimes that hampers a case.
Well, what do we always say? The first thing we always say is, let's slow it down.
Slow it down. We've been
slow it down. Bring it to a crawl. Mm-hmm. You know, everyone wants immediate questions answered, and I get it, but it's impossible. Like, we literally bring this stuff down to a total crawl, and that's how it gets done right and thoroughly, and things aren't missed because there is no rush. You make time stand still as best you can, and you don't listen to the external outside cries and demands. You stay focused as an investigator on what you need to do. And the best advice I got from senior detectives was always make time stand still. Slow it down.
Yeah, whenever you rush anything, I mean, the thing is we always see that mistakes got made, you know, and I know my wife busts my chops all the time, and she's like, oh my God, you're just such a attention to detail. And I think that was always because no matter what we did on the job, everything, there was no silver medals. There was no second place. It had to be perfect, everything we did, because if we messed anything up along the way, it could have a huge ramification and ripple effect towards the end of the investigation, where the trial ends up going. You know?
Well, everyone knows that every single thing you do and every single decision you make will be second guessed on an investigation.
And sometimes when you had split seconds, you know, especially the responding officers, you know, those young officers, our brothers and sisters, the men and women out there, where they had split second decisions to make at these major scenes, and then 8-10 months later they're on the stand for literally 8 hours about a split second decision that they made.
Right. Why'd you put the tape around that tree? Right? Like, why didn't you put it around that tree?
Folks, stick with us on the other side. If you got any questions, feel free to give us a call. 222-1180, 222-1180. We're the Crime Dawg Podcast. Stick with us on the other side. Welcome back, folks. We are sitting high atop the 5-star bank building in beautiful Rochester, New York. I'm Johnny FIORICA from the Crime Dawg Podcast, sitting alongside my co-hosts, Jason Blanchard and David Simpson. We are all retired cops. Jason currently a cop, 2.5 decades, still on the job. But, guys, we got a huge kudos on the break, by the way. My phone rang. And one of the guys that we all know and love for decades, Frankie Camp, gave us, he goes, hey, only Frank Camp can say this, right? You three idiots sound really good on the radio. That was a compliment.
I'll take it.
It's definitely a compliment in our world. So that's good. We'll take whatever we can get.
So, guys, like we talked about, we're going a little heavy on the crime, especially the murders and the shootings. Obviously, we talked about this before the last break. We talked about Jamieson, Ritter, Rochester, native that was murdered in Cleveland, Ohio, on July 4th. We talked about all the Chicago shootings that have happened over the last weekend and all the murders. That's why we're going a little heavy on the crime. And plus, we are the Crime Dawg Podcast, and we are all cops, which is why we're talking about it. You know, the one thing, Jay, 2 breaks ago, I wanted to bring it up that you had mentioned. You mentioned that we have a lot of good trauma surgeons. We have a lot of good doctors in our area. It's one thing when we interviewed Frank Umbrino from the murder unit in Rochester from homicide, he mentioned the same thing that you said. He mentioned the same thing, that saying, you know what, some of these murders, some of these shootings could turn into murders easily if it wasn't for the great trauma surgeons we got.
100%. And I think it's two things. It's a testament, like we talked about already, about the officers triaging on scene, right? And having skill sets that we didn't have 10 and 15 years ago, and applying tourniquets and having the knowledge and having the training and doing all that stuff. And our SWAT brothers have even more training and experience relative to that triaging. And then when you get to, an RGH or a Strong, and you're there, let's not forget too that our brothers and sisters from AMR or whatever ambulance provider are there and transporting and providing medical care along the way, and then when they get there. So I mean, these numbers could be greatly inflated if it wasn't for the fantastic medical care that the victims receive along the way en route, and then triaged by the hospitals when they get there. It's without question life-saving.
Yeah, I mean, it starts from the responding officers on the scene that may perform some type of EMT function, if you will, and then once they call for AMR or National Ambulance, that's a little shout out back in the day.
National, and not to forget anybody, right? But certainly RFD is a component. Rochester Fire is a component of that too. So those scenes when we have when the officers are first on and acknowledge that it's a confirmed shooting or a confirmed stabbing or whatever that requires aid to be rendered, RFD is there with us, usually pretty close, and sometimes well advanced of the ambulance, and they're providing critical life-saving care as well. So I mean, it's a whole entire community, but law enforcement has definitely been involved more in that life-saving measures than we were before.
It's tremendous to hear that, what you just said about the officers, because we're just talking about investigations, excuse me, and what they offer to facilitate our homicide investigations. And these same officers are also treating gunshot victims at the scene. So they have investigative skills, they have life-saving skills, they have social worker skills, going into some of these homes, dealing with some of the domestic violence. It's just amazing when you hear this sitting back, how talented these officers are and how many different scenarios they encounter on a daily basis that they have to handle. People need to really think about that. They're truly a jack of all trades.
Yeah, I mean, and it's cool for us, especially as retired guys. We could definitely brag about our brothers and sisters, because we see the work that they've done over the years, and it's cool to brag about them because, I mean, you could literally be at a homicide scene for 2-3 hours at the start of your shift, and then next thing you know, you're consoling a 5-year-old because she lost her teddy bear.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, you literally have to change gears that quickly. So yeah, you're right, David. It is a testament to our brothers and sisters that are out there. And Jay, you're right, because the medical training that the officers get today, triaging things, was nowhere near what I got 30 years ago.
We got none. I mean, I don't even like the bare minimum. I mean, literally, it was get the ambulance here, like yelling on the radio, step it up. I mean, that was you almost felt helpless because, besides your standard CPR, we didn't know what we were doing. But now they're so much better trained.
Well, as they say, the game has changed, right? And it has considerably in the amount of training. And this isn't unique to the RPD, right? This is what's going on. Certainly, we can say in Monroe County. I can't speak to the nation, but I would imagine as well. And when our men and women are being trained, responding to to mass shootings, to triaging casualties, to all this stuff. Now, thankfully, we haven't had a whole lot of that in the Rochester area, and hopefully we don't. But you have to train for these things, and train as if it would be occurring. And the guys and girls out there who are doing it, like we said, they're saving lives. They are absolutely saving lives, and to the point that the hospitals have acknowledged that the actions of the officers from the first response to what they've taken, whether it be a tourniquet applied or whatever that may be, that they have saved that life of that individual, and they're recognized by the hospitals, which is, like we said, something 15 years ago that didn't happen. That didn't happen.
Nope.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the work that's done out there on a daily basis. And I tell everybody, if you ever go to an awards dinner at the end of the year, especially with the Rochester Police Department, I mean, I'm only being a braggart about them because that's my home jersey, but If you go to an awards dinner and see what these kids did, I say kids because they're all young. It's a term of endearment. It's not a sign of disrespect, but you see what these young officers do, what they have done to get an award, and there's probably like 25 other cases that somebody else could have got the same award for.
100%. 100%.
It's just amazing what these guys do. And like we always said, split-second decisions that they got to make. And then all of a sudden, you go through. It's an amazing thing. If anyone has a chance to sit on an award ceremony in any department, but specifically the RPD, to see what these kids did. And there's only one officer that they pick per month.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Yep.
Folks, we are the hosts of the Crime Dawg Podcast, sitting in for Bob Lonsberry today. Stick with us on the other side. If you got any questions or concerns, 222-1180, give us a call. Matt? Welcome back, folks, to Bob Lonsberry Show. I'm Johnny FIORICA from the Crime Dawg Podcast, along with my co-hosts, David Simpson and Jason Blanchard. Guys, we almost lost the signal. I missed the third base side from Mikey, the producer, because I was talking about something.
I'm aware.
Thought we were being infiltrated.
I thought we were being... Jay punched me on the left arm, and I'm like, what? And I didn't have my headphones on. Mikey, good call, buddy. Anyways, folks, let's wrap up this crime talk. If you got any questions or concerns, call us at 222-1180, 222-1180. We were talking about crime and murder and everything that's going on nationally. One of the things nationally, especially the 2023 crime data from the FBI guys, this is unbelievable. To put it full circle, we got FBI reported that murders declined in 2023, right? Said that they were down 13% all over the country, and violent crime dropped by like 5% compared to 2022 levels. The Washington Examiner did a deep dive into this, and the stats weren't true, and it was not the FBI that was giving false stats. What the Examiner realized was the stats that the FBI was given, national stats, mostly from Democratic cities nationally, they were underreporting violent crime and murders.
Shocker.
Underreporting violent crime and murders. So the FBI is spitting out these stats, and they can only put these stats sheets together with the information that they're given.
True. Doesn't surprise me at all that they're cooking the books.
Cooking the books is right, Jay. So now you got stats that are coming out from the FBI. You got information that's being spewed from the White House, which we're going to get into whole Biden stuff probably the next segment. But you got the White House talking about, oh, look at this. Since we've been in office in 2020, crime dropped, violent crime dropped, murders dropped, when in fact they didn't drop. And the Washington Examiner outed everybody. Again, this should have been a headliner, but this was stats that they gave, and it was like a page 17 news article that no one even picked up on.
How did they exactly go about making a murder or assault disappear? Like, were they?
They weren't. So, in other words, the cities weren't reporting the crimes to the FBI database. So, these cities are required to report their stats to the FBI. Then the FBI puts out an annual report nationally on what happens. What they figured out, and it wasn't the FBI that figured it out because they just get the stats and they spin them back out. It was the actual Washington Examiner did a deep dive, and it's like, wait a minute.
So cities just weren't even giving them the data. Whole cities were missing. It wasn't like they said we had 40 murders instead of 80. They were just not giving any of their data to be plugged in.
Well, they were giving some data. They weren't giving all the data. Yeah, and most of the data.
The little how's she going?
Yeah, it was a little how's she going, and there was a little hitch in the giddy up, and then all of a sudden they looked in a deep dive, and when the Washington Examiner actually looked at it, they had saw that most of the cities that were doing this were Democratic-run cities. So, well,
and the reason, again, I'm not super smart. I'm somewhat smart, but the reason that these stats are reported and they're supposed to be reported honestly is because cities receive federal funding, right? So they receive federal funding for a litany of things, whether it be crime fighting or firefighting or whatever it may be. There's funding that comes in, and that's why they're required to report accurately the numbers that are coming in. So the funding, I'm sure, affects that one way or the other. I'm not surprised that people would think that it's not going to get checked. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been checked, unfortunately, in the last 4 years. I know we're going to get into some of the presidential talk potentially, but we've talked about on the podcast. We've talked about the southern border, and we talked about the fentanyl crisis, and we've talked about a litany of things. And it feels like, from our perspective, that a lot of these things aren't getting the attention that they deserve when we see the impacts. We see it in our own communities. Front line, the opioid crisis, and it's like I don't know how that's not a topic on the nightly news every night. And the fact that our border is just it's not our border with Canada, it's our border with Mexico, and the fact that our president and vice president have not spent any time that I'm aware of down there in working with our border states trying to secure the border, so much so that Texas has basically gone on their own and said, this is what we're doing to secure it and deal with it, to the federal government. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating when, you see that stuff, in the northeast part of the country that's, 2,000 plus miles away, coming in and destroying lives here. It's amazing that we don't address it.
What's the old adage, you don't go by, don't always trust the numbers. Like we always say, look out your window. How do you feel when you go downtown in a city? How do you feel when you travel and you're in certain area? Your gut doesn't lie to you.
Well, I mean, the thing is, too, especially during the times past 2020, right? I mean, from 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2020, you're sitting there looking at these stats, and they're telling you one thing, and your gut, like you say, is telling you another. Look out your window, like you say, because at the end of the day, you see on the nightly news all these things that are going on, especially in 2020, 2021, these riots and the pillaging and all this other stuff. And you're like, wait, crime's down? How could that possibly be? Crime is down. You know what I mean? It's like the old adage, don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining.
Right.
But, I mean, that's exactly what they were doing. The White House was doing this, and it was being pushed out there by national media, too.
Well, of course, because it benefits because it benefits those in power. Of course, of course, they're going to ring the bell that makes them look the best, even if it's.
And then when the examiner came out with this story, and by the way, this story's been out since, what is it, July now? It's been out for probably, I think it came out in like March-ish, April-ish. This examiner story. If you go on the Googles with an S. The examiner came out with this, and there was absolutely nobody addressed it. It was like, there's nothing to see here. What are you talking about? That was the best part about it.
Hide it.
That's why I can't wait to get
into the rug.
The next segment. That's why I can't wait to get into some of the national politics stuff and some Biden stuff. We're going to get into in the next segment.
I can't wait for the next debate. Is what I can't wait for.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the debate at the next segment too, by the way, because there's a lot of things going on. I mean, literally, it is dominating national media right now, and it's also dominating mainstream media that refuse to cover anything.
Well, yeah, but it's dominating because they want them out. They want to wear on someone else. Yes, of course. They hide the crime numbers because they don't want it to look bad for those in power.
Yep.
And then now they want this guy out, and they protected him for so long, and now they want him out. So now they're blasting him every single day and putting pressure on him to get out because they want him out. They know they can't win unless they get him out.
Right. And what's so funny is now you have. What's hysterical is you have all of a sudden the mainstream media like the MSNBCs and not so much Joe Scarborough, that goof, but you have some of the MSNBC, CNNs, and all the liberal stuff. You have some of the high profile Dems, and you got some Hollywood elites now coming out who swore by this guy Joe Biden for literally 4 years, specifically the last 2 years. And now they're all saying, "Oh, he's got to step aside. He's got to step aside right now."
Right, they couldn't see this for the last 3 years. They couldn't see this going on.
Like all of a sudden, you have a big surprise, right, folks? We're going to get into some Biden and political national politics after the next break. We're the Crime Dawg Podcast. Stick with us on the Bob Lonsberry Show on the other side of the break. Welcome back, folks. Johnny FIORICA from the Crime Dawg Podcast. My co-host, David Simpson, Jason Blanchard. We are sitting high atop the First Federal Plaza. Oh, wait. Changed banks. HSBC, now it's 5-Star.
Attaboy.
It's one of the banks.
Just rename it, Johnny.
Marine Midland. We're sitting high atop Marine Midland Plaza. No, wait, Central Trust. Shout out to Nellie. Nellie was a Central Trust person.
Right. Love the Nells.
We don't even know. Whatever bank it is. Chester's check cashing. That's what we're going to say.
MLK Tower or whatever. Wasn't that the park out front?
It is the park.
It was the park out front. Yeah, I mean, keeping with everything that happened. Well, we're not going to get into what happened. But anyway, so, guys, before the break, we started talking a little bit about our illustrious leader, the main man in charge, President Biden. Let's start with...
Is he in charge?
He's not in charge, man. He's just, it's like, what do they say?
His wife looks like she's in charge. Whoa.
What is she doing? Man. The Dr. Biden. She got the same degree that Cosby had. She's like an ED doctor.
Do you know the arrogance you have to call yourself a doctor?
Not ED medically. It's like education doctor. No disrespect for our teachers out there listening. I'm not being disrespectful, but.
Yeah, but they're not walking around. I don't know any teachers I don't know anyone that calls himself a doctor.
Yeah,
that isn't a medical doctor.
If I ever meet her, I'll make her call me detective.
If I had any advanced degree, I would make you refer to me as
the only
doctor.
guy. The only person I know that called themselves a doctor that wasn't really a doctor was Dr. J.
What about Dr. Dre?
Oh, Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre is kind of a doctor.
Yeah, he is a doctor.
He might make more money than a lot of doctors.
After he sold Beats, he's a millionaire now.
Roger that.
The doctor of Beats.
Yeah. Well, anyways, sitting high atop the 5-Star building, that's the bank. We're probably going to get a yell at it, you know what I mean? But anyway, so we're talking about Biden. Okay, I know the financial guys talked a lot about Biden yesterday, but we going to touch upon it just a little bit today. So his physical, mental
acuity,
and his spray tan, by the way,
or lack thereof at the debate. God, the guy looked like The Walking Dead.
He looked like he came straight out of Bartholomeo's funeral home.
Well,
I swear they set him up. I swear they set him up.
You say that, right? But here's the funny part. So basically, that whole first debate was all of his terms, right? He didn't want a live audience. He wanted to have
his terms or their terms.
Well, it wasn't Trump's terms, right? Trump wanted the audience, and it was moderated by CNN. And at the end of the day, he kind of tried to, the teeter-totter he tried to have tilted in his favor. And from literally the first 35 seconds of the debate, it was like watching a train wreck. I mean, it was, and he tried to combat that now with this weekend with his interview with Stephanopoulos. And that damage control wasn't anything that controlled any type of damage, right? It was supposed to be this prolonged interview that was going to air in 3 different segments, and the whole sit-down took 22 minutes. It was 22 minutes worth of an interview that they couldn't break out and show over 3 different days, so they had to just drop it all at once. And it's a bad look. And honestly, it's embarrassing.
Can we play What If for a second?
I don't really want to, but go ahead.
Where are you going with this? Is Bob going to have us come back? Is this a good what if or bad what if?
But what if there's people inside the inner circle that know he can't win and he can't hold up, and that he's not going to bow out on his own, and that they know that the only way they can get him to even think about it is if he looks bad and external pressure moves him in that direction. That's all I'm saying. What if they've had tons of conversations, I'm sure. He's not bowing out. He's already said that.
Yeah.
But you don't think that people in there are like, we can't win and hold power unless we get this guy out of here?
Well, first and foremost, he would have sold his soul, and he did, to the devil to be president. He ran 42 times before this, right? He literally made the agreement, because we all know, let's just face it, it's the Obamas, it's the Clintons, it's the Schumers, it's the Pelosi's. It's all those people that are actually running the country, right? It's like they say, Parliament runs the country, Queen of England is just a figurehead. He's just a figurehead. He's been a figurehead even before he lost all his marbles. Okay, that's first of all. Second of all, now they got to figure out a way to oust him, because literally the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, thinks that she's running the country now. And they say, and this is all coming out from both mainstream media like CNN and all the other crazy liberals medias, that they're literally not only just reporting this on Fox, but she's actively saying we ain't going anywhere.
Well, how about his son sitting in on these meetings and all of a sudden getting off the plane and he's going to all these things with them?
Dude's a crackhead criminal.
Yeah, the crackhead.
Well, what's embarrassing, and I don't care what side of the aisle that you sit on. Okay, I don't care. I know most of Bob's listeners here are probably conservative Republicans, but no matter what side of the aisle you sit on, what's an embarrassment as an American is when you watch that, and you know that guy is the leader of our country, and other countries look to us to be, the tip of the spear, right? To be the leaders, to be the ones that are the umbrella of protection, whatever that is, with NATO, with the UN, and the fact that this guy is out to lunch is an embarrassment, and it's sad. It's sad because we are looked at by other countries as leaders, right? And I'm sure the countries like Russia and China are laughing. Sorry, Johnny. China.
Thank you.
Are laughing at what we have here, at the head of our helm. It's just, again, I don't know how you defend it. I don't know how you can sit there as a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. And again, God bless you for your political views. I'm not here to argue that. I just don't know how you can sit there as a Democrat and say this is the best option that we have, and we're gonna live and die with it. That to me is craziness. And now you see the divisiveness, coming in. And
I don't think they want to live with it now.
That's it. And the problem is
they want to do over.
And David, let's be honest, right? The problem is this wasn't something that came out of left field and surprised them. This has been going on for 24, 36 months. This isn't anything that's a surprise. The problem is now it's harder and harder to disguise and hide.
Well, it's harder and harder to get him out of there.
Right, and to get him to a cognitive state where he can stand and take questions. And you look at the press secretary now, right, when the people are asking questions, when the press people are asking questions.
Oh, she had dominated.
Well, how could she not? I mean, I'm not defending her, but I'm not defending
her either, but think about standing there and having to answer questions of...
You're just a punching bag.
Of craziness, right? It's how do you
Here, let me go get punched in the face today.
Right.
Hang on, I don't feel sorry for her. You know why I don't feel sorry for her? Because I loved up until like 2-3 months ago, she was like, I can't keep up with this guy. Right. Behind closed doors, this guy's a machine. He wakes up early in the day, and they're like, and now she comes out yesterday and gets her face kicked. Anyways, we're going to talk about this a lot more, folks, on the other side of the break. Stick with the Crime Dawg Podcast, guys, on the Bob Lonsberry Show. We'll be back on the other side.
Another hour of the Bob Lonsberry Show with the hosts of the Crime Dawgs Podcast starts now on News Radio WHAM1180.
Thank you, Todd. You have a voice of an angel. I can listen to you all day and all night. We are the Crime Dawg Podcast. I am your host, Johnny FIORICA, along with my co-host, David Simpson and Jason Blanchard. We are filling in for Bob Lonsberry today. Guys, before the break, we were talking about our illustrious leader, President Joseph Biden. We were talking about his mental capacity and what was going on. At the end of the day, I got to share a quick story. So watching him on the news the last year maybe, because he wasn't even like talking like this in 2020. I mean, he had his faculties about him. But I think the year is correct. I want to say my daughter was like 13. It was 2012. We were at a conference. I bring my wife and my daughter with me. We were in Florida, and it was when the Aurora, Colorado movie theater shooting happened. And Biden was the guest speaker at this conference. And he shows up, rolls up, like Jay says, rolls up on the set. And he comes there with Secret Service. And full disclosure, I mean, this guy was so dynamic. When he was
the vice president at the time, right?
He was vice president, right. Yeah. He was the vice president at the time. He was very dynamic. It was funny. Sidebar story, because I got stories within stories. My daughter didn't want to get out of bed. And she's like, I don't care who's downstairs. I don't want to hear. And my wife's like, get out of bed. He's the second most powerful man in the world. We're going to go listen to him. And so we went. And I got to be honest with you, he was unbelievably dynamic. He was a great speaker and said a lot of good things. Obviously, it was a room full of cops, and he said all the right things. And then, of course, we got a picture with Sohn and Biden afterwards. It looks so good, the picture. It looks like it's fake. It's downstairs. I think you saw the picture of her, right?
I have seen it. That was, well, first of all, it was 12 years ago, right? So as we say all the time, Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's 12 years of age there, and I laugh, right, because you said he talked to a room full of cops. That was when he actually used to go out and support the police.
Support the cops.
Yeah, how times have changed in that as well.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Corinne Jean-Pierre got her teeth kicked in yesterday by the press corps there, and while she was sitting there, David, getting her teeth kicked in, I said this on the other side of the break, I didn't feel sorry for her because she stands up there and lies literally most of the time. And how do you feel sorry for someone like that? I don't feel sorry for her.
I mean, that is her job, basically, for this administration, is to lie and deflect.
Well, she's got to provide cover, right? So, I mean, she's doing a job, but she's not doing it well. And, even I remember after the debate,
there's some people you can't cover for.
Well, you can't fix stupid. And she was, I laughed because some of the people they interviewed after the debate, right? One of them was Jen Psaki. Is that how you say her name?
Yeah, the redhead.
The former press secretary who used to say circle back 100 times. We're going to circle back. And even she said, this was a terrible look. He did not perform well, blah, blah, blah. And again, we keep kind of going back. But what's funny is these were his terms. The whole parameters were his. And he basically sequestered himself in Camp David for 6 or 7 days prior to do all this prep. Meanwhile, Trump was out holding rallies and doing whatever he was doing, right? And he had these excuses then that he came out with that said, well, I had jet lag, I was tired, I was this, I was that.
Yeah, cold.
Right. And it's like, it's just like you said earlier, David, it's the eye test, right? I mean, you could sit there. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't know how you defend when you look at it and you say, well, this guy didn't really perform too well, I think is the understatement of the debate. So we'll see. I'm anxious to see the next one. I don't know. I haven't. Maybe you guys know when it's scheduled. I'm not sure when the next one's scheduled.
That was September.
And what the format is. I know this was the earliest one, and I also thought, right, you hate to think all these cynically, but this was the first time they've had a debate that was this early in the presidential season, right?
What if?
Well, what I'm thinking is, there you go, right? So did they want to, quote unquote, throw him out there and see, all right, if he performs okay, we're fine, or if he really goes out there and lays a dud, do we try to then have an option where we we go and we bring somebody else in?
Call an audible.
Dr. Jill did say he answered all the questions.
Yeah,
and she was proud of him for it.
She screamed in his face.
Does she know how microphones work, by the way?
I don't know.
Why every time she grabs the mic, she literally sticks it a quarter of an inch from her mouth and then yells into the microphone? I mean, I don't
think she realizes that the microphone projects louder.
Yeah.
I think she thinks she has to. It's not a megaphone. She doesn't have to.
Right.
Maybe she's used to screaming at Joe, and she feels that's how she has to project to convey her point. So it's I'll be interested to see the next debate, and I'll be interested to see if he's standing there for the next debate, which is now a debate amongst itself with the Dems to see who may or may not be there.
I mean, even if they get rid of him. I mean, the number 2 choice is not going to fare much better.
Well, and I don't even know who really, there hasn't been an agreement upon who that number 2 could, one would think that it would be.
I don't think they can walk around.
One would think that it would be Kamala, right? But
I don't think they can get around her.
But there's, you hear about, a litany of others. And again, you're right. She's the quote unquote number 2. So how do you bypass her? And I think they got a mess on their hands and they don't necessarily know how to deal with it. And it's, here we are, mid-July almost, and November's coming. Yeah,
so. She's definitely a number 2, and I think you know what I'm saying by that.
I hope he stays in and fights the good fight.
Well, let me tell you about Kamala.
It definitely provides material, so I hope he does too.
You know what's so funny? Excuse me. You know what's so funny about Kamala is when she was on the debate stage. First of all, she went ramshot over him. I mean, she called him a racist, called him everything, and then all of a sudden she's his number 2 and now singing his praises. Number 1. Number 2. What's hysterical is when she was up on the stage with the 47 other Democrats running for president back in 2019 for 2020, she polled less than 2%. I mean, they had to boot her because she polled so low. And that they're thinking about putting her in his place, because now the national news media and some of the Dems are now talking about, wow, she seems like she's more out there. She's getting a little more polished. She seems like she's doing a good job.
I think it's honestly a flip of a coin who sounds worse. She is horrible with a soundbite.
And what's on the other side of that coin, what's very interesting is that the Republican bench is pretty deep, right? So for the vice presidential candidate,
I guess they should have been vice president.
Right. Trump has a lot of qualified people, that are successfully running states or congressmen or women or senators. And I think that pool is pretty deep, what he's going to choose from. And, there's probably 10 or 12 people there that you could throw a dart at that are going to be great picks. So it's very interesting. This time of year is really starting to heat up earlier than it normally would. Mm-hmm. And I love sitting back and watching it all. I think it's all,
What are the betting lines on who's going to be the Republican vice president?
That's a good question. I don't know who the front runners are. I haven't looked. I'm sure Vegas has them.
Oh, 100% they have.
But you're talking about what the odds are, or who are the front runners?
Who the front runners are?
Yeah.
Well, the front runners are Rubio, J.D. Vance, Tim Scott, and I never could pronounce that guy's name out of North Dakota. Is it North Dakota?
Guy with the good hair.
He's got great hairline.
Does he have better hair than me?
You got a great headline. This guy.
I can say a lot of bad things about you, but you do have great hair.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. I know it's hard for you to give me compliments.
No, it's not. It's just they don't come around often to give you one. So when they come up, I hand them out.
Well, if that's nice of you, I appreciate it.
It is very nice of him.
I would disagree. I think that he could compliment me probably hourly if he wanted to, but
especially since how this day started for us, with you yelling at him in the car. But other than that,
I didn't yell.
I was in the front seat of an empty car.
I was trying to make him a better person. I didn't yell at you, David. I was giving you life skills.
So one of the things that we talked about too was we talked about Jill Biden and Hunter Biden being the confidant. It's just unbelievable. I can't wait to talk more about this on the other side of the break. Folks, we are the Crime Dawg Podcast. Johnny FIORICA, Jason Blanchard, and Dave Simpson sitting in for Bob Lonsberry. We'll see you on the other side. Talk about more Biden talk. See you in a couple minutes.
WHAM1180.
Welcome back. We are sitting high atop the 5-star building. I'm not messing it up this time, Jason. I'm not going to mess the bank up. I called it 42 other banks in the last segment. I'm not doing that this time. Folks, don't forget, stick with us because we got Chief Scotty Peters from the Irondequoit Police Department coming on with us. I'm Johnny FIORICA, along with David Simpson and Jason Blanchard. We were from the Crime Dawg Podcast. We're sitting in for Bob Lonsberry today. Guys, prior to the break, we've been talking about Joe Biden, the fearless leader. We talked about Jill and Hunter, which I think is hysterical, them advising the president. One of the things I did want to talk about before the break was Kevin McCarthy, the former Speaker of the House. Did you guys see the interviews he's been doing? He's been talking about how he'd sit in these interviews and how Joe was just totally out of it. Like he was saying it. He would say it publicly, and then he'd get chastised by the media and other Dems for saying how Joe was actually acting in these meetings. And now it's coming out that, yeah, this was probably the beginning stages of his whatever illness he may or may not have. That's sarcasm. But anyways, it's amazing. So one thing I want to talk about too was, did you guys see what happened? I just heard about it late last night. The Dems are so woke, right? They're pro women and pro African American, right? Until you make them mad. And what do I mean by that? There was a radio host. She was a female black. The White House literally gave her questions to ask the president. And then she went out in the news media and told on him and said, hey, I was given questions to ask. And then they ended up literally making phone calls and got her fired.
She got fired?
That's what they're reporting. That's what many news outlets are saying, that this DJ, this radio host, if you will, a female African-American woman, she was going to interview or did interview Biden, and then she ended up getting fired because she released that the White House gave her questions, and then they actually wrote the questions, told her, this is what we want you to ask the president. She ended up telling national media, and then she got canned.
Well, it's it's like, remember Sage Steele at ESPN?
Right.
She was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And they ran her out because she wasn't
Because
left
she wasn't
and woke enough.
She wasn't complying with the COVID nonsense. She didn't buy
Yeah, and
into
she
it.
just wasn't falling on
Right.
the
She does
left
great
side.
work.
She does great work. Yeah.
She might own ESPN when this is all said and done. But back to what Johnny said. I think it's funny, right? Because we've had, we are, to say that we're JV is a compliment to JV. We're not even JV.
We're more modified.
Right, for our podcast and everything else. But we've had some awesome people that were gracious to come on. Never did any one of them ask us in advance, hey, can you tell me what the specific questions you're going to talk to me about? Can you give me this? Can you give me that? Because they were confident in their abilities to come on and have candid conversations with, whatever we're talking about. Now, clearly we're going to talk about whatever their area of expertise is, right? We had Joe D'Amelio on. We talked about, his experience in court and everything else. We didn't talk about the NFL draft.
But even when we asked Rachel to come on, Rachel never, needed the questions
Right.
beforehand or any promises. She's like, let it rip.
Yeah,
Right.
she let it rip. She was Rachel Barnhart. You're talking about Rachel Barnhart came on our podcast. She was very benevolent. I mean, because obviously, when you know the premise, when you have three cops who have a podcast called the Crime Dawg Podcast, you definitely are walking into the proverbial lion's den.
Sure. And she knew we don't agree with a lot of her
right.
a lot of her points of view.
Right.
But
And when Rachel and I spoke on the phone, when we were trying to figure out dates and times and when she was coming, and we were sharing emails and text messages back and forth, one of the things that we talked about was, hey, you know what? We probably don't have similar views on a lot of topics, but we don't want you to think that your opinions aren't welcome on our podcast.
Correct.
And that was one of the reasons why she told me that she came on, was because she felt, we were telling her the truth. And we actually followed through with it because we were great with her, not because we were trying to put on a facade. We were great with her because we had a healthy dialogue. And that's what I think has fallen by the wayside in America today. I mean, you just can't talk anymore and have an opposing view with somebody without them calling you a racist, a misogynist, a whatever.
Want you fired. Want you to lose whatever you have.
Yeah.
Take what you got.
It's a cancel.
Take my lawnmower out of my shed.
Right. It's a cancel culture, and the we've said it before. The greatest thing about this country is, one of the greatest things, right, is freedom of speech. You have the ability to go out and have a conversation, and no one wants to listen to people yell and scream and tell them that your opinion is wrong. I'm happy to listen to whatever people have to say. I don't have to agree with it, right? But when you start making attacks personally and calling for people, just like you said, David, calling for people's jobs and calling for people's careers, that's the beauty of this country. We have the right to an opinion, whether you agree with it or not. Doesn't matter, right? And I'm not here to sell anybody. I'm here to have a conversation about it, and that's we are so quick now to say, this person can't say that, and they should be removed from wherever. That's terrible.
Well, I think if you chop off the far left and the far right, most Americans are more closely aligned than the loud voices on the far side of each party. I think, unfortunately, the left's radical loudest voices have influenced some policy and led them to become far from center, which ultimately will affect them in upcoming elections. I can only hope. But,
well, it's the old common sense isn't so common sometimes, right? And it's not these. Sometimes we make these things harder than it needs to be. And if we just take a step back and we look with a broader lens, maybe we find out that there is some common ground here, and we can get to what we're both talking about.
how about some common sense?
Right.
Right?
Hey, is that a tagline of a podcast?
I think it is. It's a little common sense. Say it out loud.
David's dropping our podcast tagline. It's finally common sense has arrived. That's the Crime Dawg Podcast at Crime Dawg Podcast on the YouTube channel. We got a website too called thecrimedawgpodcast.com where you could take a look at our litany of library of episodes that we have. We're about 25, 26 in, something like that. But check us out. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when you talk about the Democratic side of the aisle, I think what ends up happening is you're right, the extreme left. And I think Rosie O'Donnell said it the best on Jimmy Kimmel, and he's like, this is before she got canceled, and he said, I thought you were a Democrat. And she says, I am a Democrat. I've been a lifelong Democrat. She goes, the problem is you people. You lefties are so far left, you don't even know what you stand for. It's a great little snippet, and he didn't know what to say. Obviously, he gets all his stuff written for him anyways. Yeah. He's a goof anyway. But anyways, she said, you guys are so far left nowadays, you don't even know what you stand for.
True.
And that was the beginning of the end. That was the beginning of the end. Folks, we got a lot more talk. Stick with us because we got Scotty Peters, the chief of the Irondequoit Police Department, coming up soon. We are the Crime Dawg Podcast, filling in for Bob Lonsberry. Stick with us on the other side. We'll be right back. Good morning, Rochester, New York. We are the Crime Dawg Podcast, filling in for Bob Lonsberry today. I'm your host, Johnny FIORICA, my co-host, David Simpson, and Jason Blanchard. Folks, we told you we had a good one. On the line with us, the famous, the infamous, more than famous, Chief Scotty Peters from the IPD, Irondequoit Police Department. Chief, welcome.
Thanks, guys. I don't know about famous, but I appreciate the call.
Chief, listen, I know you're way too busy to be listening to us this morning, but and we're not going to get into any political talk, but Jason had mentioned about how people need to be prepped and things like that. I just called you to thank you to be on the podcast yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry, the podcast, to be on Lonsberry today. And literally the one thing, the quote that you gave me was, Johnny, you can ask me whatever the hell you want. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. What you see, what you get, man.
So, Chief, and by the way, to our audience, I apologize if one of us calls you Scotty. We've been friends for over 30 years, so I will keep it professional. But, Chief, you had you guys got a 100th anniversary coming up, don't you?
Yeah, it's this year has actually been the 100th anniversary. We tried to go back in the town board meeting minutes. Tried to narrow it down, and best we can find out was in March sometime that it might have been official that the Irondequoit Police Department was officially named. And so, of course, me being Irish, I chose March 17th as our anniversary date. So we'll go with that.
What I wish I could say I was shocked, Chief, that you picked that date.
But it's been great, man. We've been a lot of stuff going on with the department throughout the year. So we having professional photographs taken of everybody. We've been redoing some of the lettering on the cars, been doing some logos. We got brand new vehicles. We got the new motorcycles. We got the K9 unit started back up. We'll have National Night Out coming up in August. So that'll be our way of celebrating with the town, and I'll be putting more details about that. But, it's just nice to actually, I know we went through it before I left RPD. We went through with the 200th anniversary. And so I was just trying to bring some of that back here with the town here. So that's, it's kind of gives you a little pride actually walking around wearing the uniform, and it's been good.
That's cool because obviously we talked about it. Obviously we're all RPD, and you wore our home field jersey for so many years before you retired with us. You came from a hell of a background. Your background, you worked the streets. You were officer, sergeant, lieutenant. You went up through the ranks all the way to deputy chief. You were on the SWAT team. And your resume reads literally like a catalog.
Like the opposite of you, Johnny.
Oh, see now, Chief, did you see that? That was so. Jason just said the opposite of my resume.
Yeah, I was never afraid of work, so I always wanted to do everything that I possibly could. I wasn't trying to fill a resume. I was just, you needed a job done and just get it done. So that's all it was. Is I still love the job. That's the reason why I came back, and I still think it's the best job in the world. I used to sit there and say, guys, even at 2:00 in the morning, sitting on a street corner at Jefferson Avenue, I'm like, look around. People write books about this. They make movies about this. Just enjoy it. And if you're not having fun at work, find something else. But you have a front row seat to the best job in the world. So sit there and just embrace it and enjoy it, and have fun with it. And that was a great thing about it, is the amount of great memories that I've had over these 32 years is. It's just been amazing. And quite frankly, being a police officer, I would have never had those opportunities, except for, being able to be put in those positions. So, you know what? If you enjoy taking calls for service, go out there and take calls for service. If you like doing the undercover stuff, go do that. You want to be proactive, go do it. And that was the best thing about my teams is I needed somebody to do all those jobs. So, some people might like to do the report. Some people might like to do the proactive stuff. Go ahead and do it. And when we come together as one team, we did great things together. So that's all I care about. I can't put anybody in a mold the way that you're going to do this. And we need everybody to, be part of the team.
Hey, Chief, you talk about memories. Were you specifically referencing my Wooden Street incident where I saved everybody's life that one day when that crazy dog came out of the basement? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, Johnny. So if anybody doesn't realize, John was a crack pistol shot in the department.
Thank you.
I believe I got him a gold medal in a competition.
Possibly.
But yes, he was. That time right there, John. I'll spare everybody the details, but I know you call it a win. I don't call it a win, but it was.
Well, when that dog came from the basement, just full disclosure, Chief, anybody could have shot a dog with a pistol in the center chest. I chose to nick his rear left pinky toe.
And it was a Chihuahua.
And
I was going to say it was a toy poodle, but either way.
And I'm sure the dog looked menacing, but it actually, after the dust settled, you realize that the dog was only a puppy. So.
Yeah, well, when you came in the house carrying him and he was licking your face, I realized he was not the threat that I thought he was.
Exactly.
Chief, switching gears here, brother. You guys had a pretty high-profile media incident last week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We had what turned out to be a murder suicide. Obviously, I was listening to you guys earlier on, going back to all those years of being in charge of CIU and doing all that stuff and knowing what kind of work goes into the homicide investigations. Thankfully, we just don't get that in the town, and that's another great thing that I love about working here. But when it does come up, we have the experience of actually dealing with them and dealing in high volume and high profile cases. So watching how all of our officers worked that day was awesome because everybody worked flawlessly. You talk about slowing things down. Yeah, there was no time to we didn't have to get on the throttle and chase things down. We were going methodically through all those investigative steps and having all those things and have a great investigative team that worked. So they were on that. They were on their game, doing what they needed to do. We were the operations guys were doing what they needed to do as far as securing the scene, securing the location, securing witnesses, and we just worked through that methodically. And as it started to go, you realize that we had started to have some solvability factors and realized that it was going to take us out of our area. So before these days happen, that's the reason why we have all these great partnerships with Monroe County, with the state police, with all of the other agencies that are around inside here. And so you start to call up all of your resources, and everybody just jumps in and try and help. So when it found out that everything was going to go down to Livingston County, Livingston County, everybody came together there. I think even the Village of Perry Police Department jumped in there and helped down there. So, when something major like that happens, it's awesome in the fact that everybody comes together. Park Police were invaluable because obviously everything wound up down to Letchworth State Park. They know that place like the back of their hand. It's like us knowing, all the streets that we work on a car beat. They found the suspect's vehicle quickly, put out the bolo, and then everybody came together to, obviously we had how the way the incident ended. But then you start to look together and try and find motives. Without having the suspect here, we don't know what the ultimate motives were, but then, you realize that you're dealing with a murder-suicide of two family members. So now you got to look at it. You talked about putting the pieces together and what happens afterwards. And now you have to sit there and realize, how does a family make sense of all this and how does the family put everything together? And I think we kind of, the media clamors for all the information, and that day the media was incessant. And they were just asking questions, this and that kind of stuff. And, you can't give them everything that they want because you can't give up that information because they're investigative leads. And, so you're trying to strike that balance of what information can you put out to make sure, let people know that, this wasn't just a random incident and people are just going through shooting people, and what kind of information you can put out that you're not going to compromise the investigation. So, I remember listening to you guys talking about, you had to go through your process and slow things down. And, you guys are doing the work. And when I was deputy chief, I'm trying to, deal with the media. And so, there's two different stories that you're trying to get taken care of. And so it's a delicate balance sometimes. And it's just, sometimes it gets a little crazy, but you know what? Thankfully I have enough experience to have dealt with that, or unthankfully that I have that experience.
Hey, Chief, we would love to talk to you some more. Would you mind sticking with us on the other side of the break? And we got a couple more things to talk about. We appreciate your time. That's Chief Scotty Peters for the Irondequoit Police Department. Folks, we're filling in for the Bob Lonsberry Show. Stick with us on the other side. We'll see you in a couple seconds. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bob Lonsberry Show. We are the Crime Dawg Podcast, co-hosting today, along with me, David Simpson, Jason Blanchard. Chief Scotty Peters stuck with us after the break. Chief, we appreciate you sticking by for us.
Oh, absolutely, man. I'm here.
So we just want to shore up. You said you had that the murder-suicide last week. I obviously long in the tooth and retired for the last, 10 months now, and or so. I can't add anymore. But either way, what I saw in the news was you were talking about it was the cooperation that you had with the many different agencies. And that's one of the things that brother and sisterhood, that when we come together to collaborate, there's nothing like it.
Exactly. That's the one thing I don't think people really understand is, we all realize we're all doing the same job. Maybe at the same volume or anything else, but it doesn't matter. We all still do the same job. So any cop anywhere can sit there and have the same story about, oh yeah, I remember that time I had this, and we all can relate because we've all done it throughout our career. So, obviously we think about us being in the same situation, needing some help, and that's just what we do. We got in this job to help people, and that's what. And
yeah.
You see a comrade, a friend, everything, and that's what we do is we help each other, and that's how the job gets done.
Well, speaking of camaraderie, one of your favorite subordinates or insubordinates wants to ask you a question. David Simpson wants to talk to you, Chief.
Chief.
What's up?
Hi, buddy. We worked under Sheriff Bachelor on the SWAT team, and the compliment is that I see you guys kind of in the same light as far as your leadership style and stuff like that. I was wondering if you're getting out at all with the guys and girls, taking some jobs and stuff like that, and how you're working that into the schedule. Like, are you working
Absolutely.
With each platoon, or how's that going?
Yeah. Yep. No, I try and get out there as much as I can. As soon as I can get out of behind the desk, I'll jump on the motorcycle or actually jump on one of the side-by-side razors, get out there with them. At least once a month, I'll actually work or actually go to midnight's roll call and be out there for a couple hours. Just try and talk to the guys, see what they have to say, any concerns, and then also get out there for a couple calls, see what's going on throughout the day. Absolutely, I do it not to check up on people. I do it just to keep my skills sharp and to be seen. And so all the time it's. Listen, not for anything. I would love to sit there and, take calls for service and go do all that stuff, but I want to avoid any union grievances for taking jobs away from guys. But also the biggest thing is, guys appreciate seeing you out there, but, at the end of the day, they want the boss looking over their shoulder. But you know what? The guys are doing a great job, and it's been amazing since I started over here. It's the amount of support that the town gives us, and the amount of truly grateful people that are here for our town police department. And quite frankly, I hadn't had that in a long time, and it's refreshing, and it makes you realize how good of a job this really is.
Hey, Chief, could you touch upon you're one of the first agencies, if not the only agency, to revamp their chase policy. Could you explain to the listeners what that is?
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple other agencies that have had, quietly have had, kind of modified chase policy. But I remember when the chase policy was taken away from us, in the city. I can still remember trying to chase a car down Genesee Street at 2:00 in the morning with not one other car on the street, and they had to, turn the lights off. And I was, just ticked you off because I'm like, wait a second, you're paying me to do this job, but you're not allowing me to do the job. So fast forward, last year, obviously there was an incident. The previous town supervisor was caught up in a big group of ATV dirt bikes, and there was probably about 200 strong. We got about 35 complaints from people that day in the town. Mm-hmm. So at that time, the supervisor called me like, "What are we going to do about this?" I'm like, "Well, first of all, I said we need to, I need to get your support to be able to change the chase policy." And I said, second thing is I need something that I'm going to be able to chase after these vehicles. I said, something that, that can keep up with them, go over curbs, all that stuff, because quite frankly, it's the SUVs just weren't going to make it, or the Chargers weren't going to make it. They can't go over curbs, can't do all that stuff. So instead of putting guys on dirt bikes, what I wanted to do, we came up with the Razors, the side-by-sides. A lot safer for the officers. It's four wheels. They can still do everything that a dirt bike can. May not be able to fit in all the spots, but there's a roll cage and it's going to be safe for the officers. Plus, it looks a little bit better when you're using the same type of vehicle to chase these vehicles. We looked at our chase policy and made sure that we kept our chase policy, changed it so that it stayed within accreditation standards. We still had all the safeguards in place and everything. And my thought process was, if I can teach you how to shoot a gun, when to shoot a gun, when to defend your life, when to defend somebody else's life. And usually when officers get in a shooting, you probably have maybe a quarter to a half a second to make that decision process. So here, at least the officer can actually turn the lights on and think about and go through that whole checklist, the risk versus rewards checklist. Is it 3:00 in the morning? Is it 3:00 in the afternoon? What's he wanted for? How fast are they going? You can actually start to process this. So at least actually try and start the chase. And if it's one of these things where at 3:00 in the afternoon, the boss says, "Hey, we're not going to do this today,"
right?
They cancel the chase and the officer just turn the lights off. No problem.
Hey, Chief, could you stay with us on the other side of the break? I want to continue this conversation. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Is that all right?
Absolutely, man.
All right, cool, man. I appreciate you taking the time for us. Folks, stick with us on the other side. That was Chief Scotty Peters from the Irondequoit Police Department. We'll be right back.
Another hour of the Bob Lonsberry Show with the hosts of the Crime Dawg Podcast starts now on News Radio WHAM1180.
Hello, folks. Thanks for sticking with us on the other side of the break. We got Chief Scotty Peters from the Irondequoit Police Department. Chief, we know you're a very busy man. We can't thank you enough for sticking with us through 3 breaks. Your third favorite person on the Crime Dawg Podcast, Jason Blanchard, wants to ask you a question, Chief.
Chief, they've been beating me up all morning. I don't appreciate it. There's no reason for it. I've been here. I've been very cooperative with Johnny.
Well, when you see a punching bag.
And he's always attacking me. And we won't even get into the fact, Chief, that you went to Aquinas and David went to McQuaid, but that's a whole other story. I wanted to tie in, because you had mentioned before about all the stuff relative to the critical incident in Irondequoit, and it made me think of, I think we were probably all in Genesee section at the same time, and when you walked in right at the roll call area, or the where Leslie's desk was, you saw the communication, coordination, cooperation, right? So I mean, it's you've clearly taken that with you as your career has gone to up through the chain of command here with the RPD, but then into the surrounding towns.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite frankly, I mean, to do the job, to do the job effectively, you just have to check your egos at the door and just do it. I mean, this isn't about, who gets the most accolades and who does all that stuff. It's just getting the job done, because at the end of the day, we have to remember the victims of the crime and the reason why we got into this job in the first place. And so it's, you can't, especially, with the newer generation, a lot of times people don't like to talk on the phone or talk face to face. I mean, that's where you made the memories. I mean, sitting there, jaw jacking like you guys are doing, just sitting around a table talking to people. And then the best thing is, we used to, I know you guys remember, we used to have to do directed patrol. You had to get out and walk on foot for like at least 30 minutes a shift. I mean, that's when people didn't call 911 when they were having a good day. They were having their worst day. And so, getting out of your car and actually talking to people and actually seeing people when they're actually just living their normal lives, you get it gives you a whole different perspective, and it's easy to get beaten down and get jaded and do all this stuff when all you do is dealing with negativity all day. But you have to realize that, that's not how a lot of people, live their daily life. So, it's that was the great part about it, and I loved doing that stuff, and that's a great thing. Get out and talking to people and just seeing seeing how they live their lives, and instead of having to call 911.
Well, and interacting with those people, on those walks and whatever else, it's nice when you had the opportunity, because down the line, those might be doors that open when you're looking for information relative to an investigation or whatever, that those people are going to give you a shout and say, hey, you stopped in my store last week and we talked, but, that robbery that happened a month and a half ago, I think I got an idea who did it. Those
100%. There was one time where we had one of our guys get T-boned up on Plymouth Avenue. And, it was Plymouth Rock territory. And, you treated the guys with respect, but they also knew that, listen, if they were, screwing up, we were going to come after them. So afterwards, I'm working staff duty. I was off the road for quite a while. And one of the guys got T-boned. And, one of the gang members, remember Chris Young, Weedy, he comes up and like, Peters, because I saw the whole thing. And I said, oh, cool, what happened? Because your guy was right. That guy pulled out, came through the red light and all that stuff. And I'm like, I said, great, you want to give me a statement? He goes, man, no, I'm not going to go on paper on that. But he goes, absolutely. And he goes, I'll tell you whatever you want. He goes, but I ain't going on paper. And I'm like, all right, I appreciate it, Chris. But, just the fact that, you've got a documented gang member who's willing to sit there and come up and talk to you and give you information and all that stuff is because, you know what? They're still human beings. And just because they were in a gang, they were doing whatever. You know what else they had to do? You still treat them like that, and you know what? They knew that if they were doing dirt, you would hold them accountable. But if they were not doing it, you weren't going to sit there and bust their chops. So that's where being a good street cop is all about.
Chief, that would explain why all the best cops come from Genesee section, right?
That's absolutely correct, 100%. Dave.
No disrespect to anyone else, but Genesee was home to all of us. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fondness in your heart, and just why Aquinas was the best high school also.
Best city school, yep, I agree with
you. I had a feeling, Chief, that the what do you call it?
Rivalry?
Catholic rivalry was going to come out of this conversation. I had a funny feeling it was going to happen.
But it's always, obviously Dave and I have been playing hockey together for a long time, and it's, obviously the AQ McQuaid, the rivalry is big in every sport, but I think the hockey rivalry was always the greatest, and it went back and forth. And obviously they did a lot of recruiting, and they had the money. But
here we go,
Chief. You got any Notre Dame games on your list this year that you're going to see?
You know what? We're trying to figure that out with my father-in-law. Obviously, he's an alumni, so we'll see which one. We used to go to the Purdue game all the time just because of all our families out in Indiana. But we'll see. But it's definitely always on the horizon.
Well, Chief, the invite stands. This is the first time that Purdue has played Notre Dame in a while. They got rid of the rivalry and it's back. So that is the beginning part of September this year. So I will be at the game, and if you're there, please let me know, and we'll share a cocktail in the parking lot before the game starts.
To guarantee Notre Dame win.
It probably is a guarantee. Purdue does not look very good this year, and Notre Dame's got some studs coming in. But that'll be a fun game Saturday afternoon. I think it's the 13th September.
It's awesome because of the it's. Obviously, they're both, Indiana teams, and it's we have cousins that are actually police officers out in Indiana. Some pretty good boys out there, and it's awesome just because of their veteran status and being Indiana State natives. They had a chance to go to any of the Indiana State colleges for free just because they were veterans and also state residents of the state. Why we don't have something like that here in New York State is, it just baffles me.
Well, it'll be it should be a fun rivalry as it always is. So throw it on your calendar, September 14th, West Lafayette this year. The Boilers are home. So,
and then you get a chance, Chief, to go into the cousins Blanchard and Jay Blanchard, owner of the the converted ambulance.
Oh, Jesus.
They converted an old ambulance into a tailgating mobile.
But Chief, if you go in it, you might not come out.
The only good thing about when it was a home game for Notre Dame was the fact that Purdue couldn't bring that giant bass drum.
The world's largest drum.
Yeah.
It'll be there, and they'll be beating on it. We'll see how many points they put on the board, but should be a fun game to say the least.
Yeah.
Well, Chief, man, we can't thank you enough. We appreciate you sticking with us through 3 episodes. You set a record. You're the only one who waited that long, and we appreciate you. We know you're a very busy man. Thanks, brother. Be safe. God bless you and your troops out there.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, John.
Thanks, Chief.
See you, boss.
Everybody, hey, thanks for having me on there, and appreciate it. You guys doing a good job, man.
All right, folks, stick with us on the other side of the break. The Crime Dawg Podcast. We're hosting Bob Lonsberry today. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back, folks. Bob Lonsberry Show. Crime Dawg Podcast is open today. I'm Johnny Fiorica along with Jason Blanchard and David Simpson. Can't thank Chief Scotty Peters enough for sticking with us through 3 segments. It was a lot of wealth of information. Chief, if you're still listening, which we highly doubt, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it, brother. Guys, we are in the final 40-minute push. But before we do anything, we have a caller. Tom, you're on the line.
Hey, good morning, guys. This question was for the chief, but evidently he left early. I got a question about 104 going west, getting off at Seneca. There seems to be a homeless encampment setting up there, and it's really, it looks like a pigsty. Who do we call about that?
You talking about the one near Walmart on Hudson?
No. Going west on 104, you get off at Seneca.
Uh-huh.
And
I believe that's the city of Rochester. I believe.
So who do you call about that?
Yeah, so I believe you would have to probably call the DOT, Department of Transportation, probably something like that. I think it sounds like if it's at Seneca, it's in the city of Rochester, but I just don't know if it's on the 104 thoroughfare.
I took my kids to the zoo the other day. I saw that as well. My son was commenting on it. He's 8 years old. He's like, "What's that? It looks pretty bad."
Okay, call the DOT then?
Yeah, DOT, you could start there. You could start with the city of Rochester. I'm sure we'll probably get a couple more phone calls on who you actually have to call. But yeah, I used to see that when before I retired, I worked a lot of overtime at Walmart, and I used to see them underneath the overpass there on Hudson Avenue also.
Well, yeah, it's getting worse.
Yeah, it's getting bad. That's what happens when, unfortunately, when the state shuts down, Tom, these mental health institutions and places to house them, they need a place to go, and I wish our government spent money on Americans like the homeless people instead of sending our money all over the world. But what are you going to do? Tom, we hope we answered your question, but
thank you, sir.
Keep listening. Someone might call in and might have the answer for you if that wasn't the one that we gave was correct. It probably isn't because I got a 520 on my SAT, and the guys that are on the podcast or Bob Lonsberry with me, they're not much more smarter than me. So probably not the right answer, but we'll get you the right answer. Did you dump him, Mikey? Okay. All right. Hey, listen, well, David, we got a lot of things. Speaking of, by the way, the homeless crisis that we see, I'm telling you right now, Tom's call was on point because I was saying I had dinner with someone the other night. We were talking, and he asked me what it was when I first came out as opposed to now, the homeless crisis. I never saw it like this before.
Never.
I mean, I never saw people like actually camping out. You would have the old people that were addicted to drugs, and they'd do the old late night wandering kind of a thing, But I literally never saw the homeless
because it's allowed.
It's allowed. It's just,
it's not complicated. Yeah. It wasn't allowed back then. I mean,
well, I'll give you a little insider trading. So, the city, specifically the police department, specifically out of the office where I work, has, in collaboration with a bunch of different agencies, has a homeless outreach team, and they go out weekly, and then they go out on the weekends as well. And they do it in conjunction with a variety of different agencies. So we're not the only one. We're kind of there as kind of overwatch, right? To just make sure that everybody's safe and during their engagements. And they go out and they offer a ton of different resources. And as we all know, a lot of these people out there who are living on the streets are out there because they're addicted to drugs. So they go out there and they offer resources and opportunities for people to get help if they so choose. They offer other resources, like clean clothes and some water and some food and whatnot. So they're trying to make sure that everybody out there knows what the resources are in place, which most do. There's a variety of homeless shelters in the city of Rochester. Some choose to not go to them because there's parameters involved going to those places.
So how receptive are they to that?
The people that they're engaging with?
Yeah, when you see it, is it like a good majority?
It's not confrontational. I can tell you that. Okay. So I've never seen it get confrontational. I think people are appreciative of people giving them information and talking to them and offering services. And it's again, you can't force people to get help, right? So if people want it, here's your opportunities and here's where you can go, and we can facilitate that now or down the line. And again, this is something that maybe 15 years ago law enforcement really wasn't involved in, right? So now they're kind of they're not acting as the lead per se, but they're definitely a part of the equation. And just as Johnny alluded to before, a lot of these people have mental health issues, and there's nowhere for them to go because we used to have places where they were able to get that mental health help, and those places have been shut by state budgets or whatever the case may be. So those people that normally would be in a facility and have the ability to get some help are now maybe sleeping in a tent under 104, and they may not have any dependency issues with drugs or alcohol. They just may need some mental health help, and that's what these outreach members are here to offer services. So it's definitely a new thing. Captain Person is the liaison in the CAB Community Affairs Bureau for the RPD. So again, it's kind of been eye-opening to me, right? I mean, it's nothing that we've been accustomed to, but it's a total buy-in from other agencies, and like I said, it's a collaborative effort, and it seems to be fairly well received.
I don't know if I'm not trying to make a joke out of it, but I was walking out of a Home Depot. I don't know where I was, but panhandler came up to me. He's like, he asked me for money. I rarely carry cash on me, but he's like, he asked me for cash. I go, I'm sorry, buddy, I don't have any cash on me. Without skipping a beat, he's like, you got Cash App? Legitimately,
that's a joke. That's a good joke.
He goes, do you have Cash App? I go,
no, but I have Venmo.
No, I do have Venmo. I don't have Cash App.
You got Venmo, buddy?
Yeah, but he's like, you got Cash App? I'm like, no. But I'm like sitting there going, like that would be the equivalent of like in the 1970s if someone said, hey, do you got any cash on you? And you said, no, I don't have it. They're like, do you have a check?
Yeah. Or could you break a 20?
Could you write me a check?
I got change.
Right.
You got change for 100? Yeah, I'm just sitting there going, I'm like, I never saw a panhandler ask me to electronically send him money.
Well, my son, who's 8 years old, Asher, had a great take. We were going to the zoo, like I said, and we were talking about this encampment a little bit, or where some people were hanging out, sleeping and stuff like that. And I said, that's where they stay and stuff like that. And Asher, without missing the beat, goes, they just keep it a little nicer. No one would care.
Folks, stick with us on the other side of the break. We're the Crime Dawg hosts, sitting in for Bob Lonsberry. We'll see you in a couple minutes. Welcome back, folks. The Crime Dawg Podcast. We're filling in for Bob Lonsberry today. My name's Johnny FIORICA, along with Jason Blanchard and David Simpson. Guys, I got to talk. We talked a little bit about Biden. Let's talk about some things regarding on Biden. First of all, the minimum wage under Biden and Gavin Newsom, if it's up to them, it's like $187 an hour.
That's awesome.
Small businesses, I'm sure they really appreciate that.
A gallon of milk is $300.
So we talk about inflation, shrinkflation. So this is why I'm bringing it up. So I'm not going to name the place because we like the business and we will continue to go there. So my wife wanted a certain type of food last Friday night. And she's like, hey, let's just get some takeout from me, you, and Frankie. Frankie obviously is our special needs brother-in-law that my wife takes care of full time. And Love him to death. Shout out to my main man, Gucci. But anyways, so she's like, yeah. She goes, let's get some takeout. So she's like, I want this type of food. I'm like, okay, cool. So we order the food, and I go to pay, and 3 entrees were $103, right? And then, of course, even though it's takeout, I still give them 20%. I threw $20 on. So 3 entrees were $120 with a tip. I mean, that's crazy. Now, listen, this is not against the business owner. That's why I'm not mentioning their names. It's not against any restaurants, pizzerias, small business, whatever you own. Any food industry, bars, I am not critiquing them at all. It is strictly because of what's going on in America right now. It's unbelievable.
Okay. I'll match you. Yesterday, not going to name the right place, 2 cheeseburgers, fries, and a Coke, $31.
Come on. Was it Wagyu?
Bidenomics, sorry.
Then you wonder why I said, according to the financial guys, I only got to work 47 more years. So, I mean,
yeah, we should have had the financial guys calling on that. Maybe they would have been calling to give us some advice on how to save money for our takeouts.
I got to raise rent. I got to raise rent to buy a cheeseburger.
But I will tell you this too, though. One of the sidebar things since 2020, during 2020, I didn't mind because I used to love the people that were working during 2020. So I'm a tipper anyways. I would have to say I'm an over tipper. I've always been like that my whole life. And I was certainly over tipping during COVID, right? When people were working, certainly tipping people that maybe otherwise you normally wouldn't tip, but you were just so happy that they were working and proud of them and all that other happy HS. But anyway, but why do I feel like every time I go to a POS system, like they turn it around, I'm like,
yeah, that's my question.
Like they just,
I got
to tip everybody.
I need to know you're right. I'm a tipper too, but like when I go pick up food and I turn it around and it's like 20% is like set up for you to pick up takeout. Do you pay that?
I listen. First of all, I get nervous because I'm like non-confrontational. I'm like, I feel bad. Like if I come back, especially if it's a place that my family utilizes, I'm like, I don't want them wiping our sandwiches across the kitchen floor.
I give them a tip, but do you give them the 20%?
I don't necessarily. Well, I'll give 20% if it's a full-blown restaurant, right? Because it takes time. The waitress takes time out of there. They assemble the food. They assemble everything. I'll give them 20% at a full-blown restaurant. But usually if it's like,
okay, you're going to get Chinese food. Get Chinese food. They turn the thing around. Are you giving the 20%?
No, I usually give like a couple bucks. Not a couple. Whoa, Jesus! You throw
it's
around.
Pick up food. I'm picking up food.
I usually if it's like okay, I'll get. We get Chinese. We get takeout sometimes near our place, so we do takeout. So if it's like a $60 tab, I might throw them like $10. But I'm not. $10 to do the pickup. $5 or $10.
$10 to do the pickup.
No, $5. If I go pick it up myself.
Right.
And I just throw them like a $5 or a $10 spot. For them to carry the bag out of the kitchen to get it to
$10?
Yeah. Then I kind of feel like you have to because, I don't want them.
Jay, what's your take on that?
First of all, I wish I had this 10 minutes back of my life that I just had to listen to you two idiots talk about restaurants and tipping. That being said, I think COVID has whacked everything out of scale, right? So, I mean, you get a cup of coffee at Starbucks and now they spin it around and they're looking for the price of coffee. And by the way,
and they got the tip jars too,
right? Mm-hmm. Well, it's
so you're not paying it.
Well, Jason throws around quarters like manhole covers. Let's put it that way. I mean, that guy.
Listen, I'm not retired you guys.
Money flows through his hands like glue.
You guys are big retired guys.
Fixed income,
living the
Fixed
dream.
income.
I don't know what to tell you. Some of us are still trying to grind and keep the economy moving forward, and others are just kind of sitting on the sidelines. Good for you guys. I think it's fantastic, but
Listen, I got to be. I'll tell you this though too. Speaking of COVID, you mentioned COVID, Jay. I went to Bagel Land at the 12 Corners in Brighton the other day. I love that place. Shout out to Bagel Land. I got the best bagels ever. I love that place. So anyways, there's always a line on a Sunday morning. I go get some bagels for the family. I don't understand, and it feels like since 2020, like people's minds aren't wired right. Like you're going to the store to get a bagel, right? I mean, there's only so many choices. I know you could put a lot of different cream cheese on it, whatever. But when you're in line and there's 4 people ahead of you and there's like that big glass container with all the bagels, Why? What was the confusion when they go, "Oh, you're next. What can I get you?" And then the person in front of you literally is at a loss for words, like they don't know what they want.
Try going to Abbott's. It's the same thing when they get ice cream.
By the way, Abbott's fantastic, but you want to talk about paying $1 for a product, man? You go there.
Well, that's worth it.
That's
price of gold. I'd pay $100 for an ice cream.
Yeah, that's a hometown favorite right there.
But you watch someone order ice cream and get a little confused?
Way to bash them, Jay.
Yeah.
I wasn't a bash. I'm saying you're talking about the price of.
Never get Abbott's to sponsor the Crime Dawg podcast now.
Jay.
Listen, Abbott's custard. Listen, that's one of my favorite. I've been eating that since we were kids.
Surprising.
When they used to have.
You didn't say you're eating the apples.
He wasn't having a salad?
Yeah.
Abbott sells salad?
No.
Oh. But anyway, so when you're like the third or fourth person in like a bagel line, like you should know what you're going to get, right? You should kind of figure out what you're going to get before it comes. Before the girl goes, "Hey, what can I get you?"
I can't help. Maybe what you should do, since you have time on your hands and you're retired, is what you should do is when you're in line, you should talk to the person in front and behind and coach them up and say, "Okay, listen, it's coming up now. Do you know what your order is going to be? And get ready because your number is going to get called." So maybe that could be like your retirement job. You could be like
Johnny. Have you ever seen someone at an ATM trying to get money out?
You could be like a life coach for people waiting in line. Maybe maybe you found like an opportunity to capitalize on your skill set.
Like a side business.
Maybe they're not clearly labeled the different. Maybe it's a little confusing.
Did you ever like especially like McDonald's, right? You go to McDonald's and the guy or the girl in front of you is looking at the menu for a guy. I mean, it's been the same menu pretty much since 1976. What do you expect? I mean, were you expecting when you paid it going, "Hey man, I can't believe you ordered a number one supersized because we're selling a lot of prime rib and broccoli today at McDonald's."
I'm that guy. Because I am.
Don't say that.
Because she'll be like, "Oh, you want a number 2?" And I'm like, what's in a number 2? I don't know. I don't eat McDonald's a lot, so I'm like, I just want a plain cheeseburger.
And the worst is now, like if you travel right on the throughway, a lot of these or the rest stops when you get off, a lot of them are the ones that you punch the order in yourself.
The kiosks.
Oh man, that you talk about. It's just. I probably
got to tip that thing too.
When I see people standing in the line there, I'd rather just walk in and just drill my head into the door,
punch yourself in the face, and walk out.
Yeah, just there's no sense.
Well, it's funny though. Full circle this conversation. Those kiosks are a direct result of the economy too, right? I mean, they're getting rid of all the workers.
Well, because they're paying $15 an hour.
Yeah,
I get it. I get it.
What it is, man.
I mean, it's. Those just like the checkouts at the stores at Walmart's and Wegmans and everything else. You go in
the what?
Walmart's
with an S.
Just don't get rid of a bartender. That's all I'm asking.
No, you can't get rid of bartenders. Those are
Johnny. It should be a kiosk for a beer. It's in the future.
Well, yeah. Well, plus they'll have the automatic pour. They'll have the.
Yeah, and then you don't get a stiff pour on the. Captain's and Coke. They limp it, they measure it perfectly.
That's when you got to bring a side pouch in when you
there you go.
A little flask action. Folks, stick with us. Some more topics when we come back. The Bob Lonsberry Show. See you on the other side. Yeah. Welcome back to the Bob Lonsberry Show. We are the Crime Dawg Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny FIORICA, along with Jason Blanchard and Dave Simpson. We have Al on the line. Al, we heard you were hypercritical of our last dialogue. What's going on, brother?
Thank you for the service that you given to our community over the years. I called you guys the Keystone Cops when I called in, so no disrespect for just picking on you a little.
We are Keystone Cops for sure. We don't take ourselves that seriously.
Well, I was wondering what your take is on that Teens settlement.
So I couldn't understand you. You cut out.
The Teens settlement, that they just announced the other day.
What are you talking about with the firefighter?
Yeah, the firefighter that doesn't have to work for the next 4 years and gets $1.75 on top of it.
Well, I would comment on it, but I'm afraid I'd get added to the lawsuit.
I don't. Very nice. Very nice.
I don't necessarily know if we could speak freely on it without getting dragged into a new one coming out. But
yeah, I thought it was rather drastic myself.
Yeah, I don't. I know the gist of everything went on, but I haven't I haven't gone through it with a fine-tooth comb to really comment too specifically, but it seems like a lot of money. But a lot of times the city has to sign off on things to avoid.
Oh, well, they become quite generous,
Yeah. So Al, just for the listeners that don't know, you're talking about the Juneteenth settlement that happened at a private party on East Avenue a couple years ago, where some Rochester firefighters went there. One person, the actual lawsuit person, said he went against his will, if I understand it correctly, and he went there and he saw some things that were racist and insensitive to that date specifically, and then he filed a lawsuit against.
He was scarred from it.
He filed a lawsuit against the city.
Yeah. I'm scarred from. I was in the Marine Corps. I'm scarred too. I mean, let's all be real. Life is,
right.
It's a learning process.
So again, for the listeners that don't know, that's the gist of the lawsuit. I'm sure I got some things wrong, but that's the gist of the lawsuit. Sure. I will say in sum and substance. And then the settlement was he doesn't have to work for 4 to 6 years, which I'm assuming takes him to his retirement date. Then he got a lump sum of $150K, and then he has a lifetime pension.
$175.
$175. Okay, and then he gets that pension in perpetuity until he passes. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, he gets half and half of that 175, half now and half when he retires.
And like Yogi Berra says, the other half's got to go to his attorney.
No, 30%.
Exactly.
30%.
Yeah, I just wanted. I've enjoyed your show. I was cutting the lawn earlier, and I was enjoying listening to you guys. So I figured I'd call up and bust your chops.
Well, Al, you were a pleasure. Can I offer something to you? Our co-host Jason Blanchard has been very sarcastic and mean to me and David, so you may have a new person to cut your lawn in the future.
I'm always looking for jobs.
Oh, thank you so much. I enjoy doing it, though. That's the only reason I do it. I could very well afford to have someone do it, but it's just a matter of a challenge to be able to still do it at my age.
Keeps you young.
Oh no! I got a few years on you, I'm sure. I at least I still sound good, If you had all going on that I had going on, you wouldn't like it.
Well, Al, listen, man, we appreciate you calling. We appreciate the support. Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you for your service.
Thank my call. Thank you for yours also.
All right, thanks, Al. God bless you. See ya. Well, that was when
Al sounded like a great guy.
When we first had
Al sounded nicer than you two, just for the record. I'd rather talk to Al than both of you.
Well, I got to be honest with you. So at first, when they said we had a caller coming in, I thought that he was not positive. I thought he was going to be. I thought it was
highly critical.
No, I thought it was going to be St. Anthony's 1976. And I was going to get bullied, kind of a thing. I didn't know if he was going to be a meanie.
I mean, he was worried about calling us Keystone Cops. I've been called a lot worse than that.
I drink Keystone beer.
Oh, I did too.
In the woods with Louis Polizzi. But anyway, so listen, folks. We said at the beginning of our of the Bob Lonsberry Show when we started to host, we are from the Crime Dawg Podcast. Our YouTube channel is at Crime Dawg Podcast. We have a website called thecrimedawgpodcast.com. That's where you can watch all of our episodes and all of our videos and our library of things. One of the things that our producer, the super producer, Danny Agnew, did for us this week after Jamieson Ritter was murdered in Cleveland, we have a link on our website. If you guys can go to it and make some apparel purchases, all the proceeds go to the foundation that is supporting our brother who was taken from us way too early in life. So again, go to thecrimedawgpodcast.com, and dog is DAWG. If you go to that, you could sponsor the Ritter family. We would appreciate it. And that's pretty much it. Listen, we want to thank Bob Lonsberry because we can't believe that we were asked to come back to the show, and super program director Phil Mercado. I want to thank Mikey, the show's producer, Todd Halliday, Barry V. They're always very cordial to us, and they don't have to be. They're always very nice to us every time we come to the studio. And a happy, happy birthday to our good friend Kathy Nuccitelli. It's her birthday today, so I'm sure she's doing something fun and not listening to us, but super happy birthday to Kathy Nucc. Guys, you got anything to add? Or
no, Johnny, I think you hit the nail on the head. thank you to Bob and Phil for coming to let us come again. A lot of fun. Appreciate them being patient with us.
All right, folks, stick with us. We'll see you soon. The Crime Dawg Podcast on the other side. Bye-bye.